This is a sound check. Can somebody confirm that y'all can hear me?
Hi, Shamila. Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you, Bruce.
I'll do a sound check too. How's my audio?
Very good.
Two-minute warning, everybody ready? Anybody not ready?
I think we're ready.
Excellent.
Commissioner Bella is not seeing him, or he's not.
Is everybody ready?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hereby call this remote meeting of the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission to order. This meeting is being recorded as well as streamed live for the public. So, Mr. Smith, do we have a quorum today?
Yes, Chair Hart, we have a quorum. You're here, Commissioner Rush, Commissioner Farrar Dyke, Commissioner Alcative, and Commissioner Lobby. You're present.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We will start today with our safety message from the WMSC's Emergency Management Specialist, Richard David. Mr. David?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Remember to use a spotter. when trying to back up large equipment, maneuver in tight spaces, or work in unfamiliar territory. This applies for heavy equipment or squeezing your car in and out of a tight space. A spotter should consider 6 points of movement that could be obstructed: front, back, left, right, and up and down. The spotter should always be visible to the operator. Make sure to have clear communications and plan to move ahead of time. If you're alone, take a moment and check the space around the vehicle before moving. Do not solely rely on mirrors or backup cameras. Stay informed, stay healthy, and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David. We will now move on to the minutes from our previous meeting. Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. The minutes of the December 13th, 2022 meeting were posted for your review. Are there any additional corrections or additions to the minutes? I move approval of the December 13th minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Rush has seconded the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Mr. Smith?
Commissioner Bob, I did not see your vote. Saw you just joined.
Aye.
Okay, the vote is 6-0 and the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We provide an opportunity for public comments at each of our meetings, and next on our agenda, we will ask if any members of the public who have joined our Zoom webinar would like to speak. If you would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and our staff will unmute one person at a time. Each person will have a maximum of 2 minutes. I will pause now to see if we have any public comments. While we're waiting, I'd like to remind everyone, including those of you watching on YouTube, that you can always report any safety concerns through our website, WMSC.gov, through our social media channels like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or by email. Ms. Minor, do we have anyone who has indicated that they would like to speak?
No, I see no hands.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Minor. We will now continue with the next agenda item, which is my opening remarks. Our meeting today includes updates on the WMSC's ongoing safety oversight activities and the actions that we take on a daily basis to ensure that Metro Rail continuously improves the safety of its system. For Metro Rail to achieve this goal, it must ensure that its leadership maintains existing progress and makes clear that following Metro Rail safety procedure is critical to the safety of passengers and personnel. Achieving our common goal of safety requires truth, transparency, and proactive steps by Metro Rail that are focused on safety. Dr. Meyer, do you have any opening remarks?
Yes, sir, I do. Excuse me. I want to thank our team for their continued dedicated work on behalf of the region to ensure that Metro Rail carries out its existing safety commitments and that Metro Rail follows through on its commitment to continuously improve safety. Our teams work across specific subject areas and through our broader programs, such as safety certification, continues to identify areas of progress at Metro Rail, as well as areas where improvements are needed. Regarding Metro Rail's 7000 series return to service plan, our team continues our systematic data-driven approach. That includes quickly communicating to Metro Rail any potential issues, such as those that appeared by Metro Rail withholding certain 7000 series rail cars from service without communicating the engineering thresholds to its frontline workers or communicating them to the WMSC. Our team quickly and thoroughly reviewed responses and documentation submitted by Metro Rail in response to our questions. Information that Metro Rail provided last Friday provided the necessary support for Metro Rail to extend back-to-back and journal bearing gap measurement intervals on 7000 series rail cars from 4 days to 7 days. We continue our oversight of Metro Rail's work, including thorough follow-up questions regarding Metro Rail data and information. The derailment investigation is continuing to progress, of course, and the WMSC is participating as a party to the NTSB investigation. Ms. Samara Singh will describe our return to service plan oversight in more detail in a few minutes. As always, we continue our oversight of all elements of the Metro Rail system. That includes our operations oversight team identifying that Metro Rail was training and qualifying personnel using outdated roadway worker protection rules. Our team gathered information, verified those issues on site, and communicated the details of this safety issue to Metro Rail when we had the details confirmed. Metro Rail has acted on this in accordance with our communication. Metro Rail has informed us that it has stopped conducting the outdated classes and is replacing them with updated instruction and testing. Our team conducted on-site confirmation work yesterday and observed training being conducted with up-to-date materials. This training is required by Metro Rail policy to ensure that personnel are up to date on the safety rules that keep them safe on and around the roadway. We are continuing our oversight of Metro Rail's activities related to the possible implementation of automatic train operation. That includes regular meetings, review of Metro Rail documentation, and requests for additional information or documentation. Our review includes questions about timelines, training, roadway worker protection, and the preparedness of not just the physical systems, but the organization itself to effectively and safely operate what is a completely new system for most current Metro Rail frontline employees. Mr. Sahu will provide more details later in the meeting. In each area, our oversight is focused on Metro Rail meeting its documented safety requirements set in its procedures. We also continue our extensive work on our audits, overseeing Metro Rail corrective action plans and overseeing Metro Rail's compliance with other WMSC orders, such as those related to the power desk and train control rooms. Mr. Raddick and Ms. Rhodes will provide some updates later in today's meeting. Moving on to ongoing investigations, our investigation of the December 9th, 2022 red signal overrun that I mentioned during last month's public meeting identified that Metro Rail had certified the train operator even though they had not completed Metro Rail's training requirements. Metro Rail requires train operator trainees to operate a train on mainline tracks with a training instructor for at least 8 hours without passengers on board before they're permitted to operate a train carrying passengers. This operator was carrying passengers despite having accumulated only 9 minutes of the required 8 hours. Our investigations team communicated this safety training issue to Metro Rail when we identified it in December. Our investigations team also reviewed additional information related to other safety events, and our operations team then conducted additional oversight activities. Metro Rail was not following its documented safety training requirements. Instead, Metro Rail confirmed last week that it had been bypassing its safety training processes and assigning train operators directly to operate trains and passenger service with another train operator as a mentor. Metro Rail's documented requirements state that this may occur only after the 8 hours of non-passenger operation with the training instructor. Metro Rail further confirmed in documents and information provided this morning that it has continued that this has continued to be its safety requirement and that Metro Rail has not made any changes to this requirement. Metro Rail identified 54 train operators who were placed into passenger service without meeting Metro Rail safety training requirements. Specifically, Metro Rail identified that these 54 operators did not get the 8 hours of instruction from a training instructor while operating in non-passenger service that are required by Metro Rail's written training procedures. Metro Rail stated this morning that 51 of those 54 operators who were placed into passenger service without meeting Metro Rail's training requirements have now completed this instruction since the WMSC identified the safety issue. The remaining 3 operators are currently on leave. Metro Rail also identified 9 other train operator trainees who had not received the required training, who had not yet completed certification as of the time the WMSC identified the safety issue. 1 additional train operator trainee who did not receive the training left the class prior to certification. Our team is still reviewing the documentation Metro Rail provided this morning to determine whether additional information might be required. As I mentioned last month, the investigation into the December 9th, 2022 event also highlights the importance of Metro Rail addressing the safety issue of Metro Rail's lack of physical characteristics training. However, Metro Rail has made no progress on this corrective action plan in the month since it was approved. The WMSC may take further action on this issue if necessary. We're also investigating a safety event on December 23rd, 2022 that Metrorail notified us of the following day. This event included an overrun of Van Dorn Street Station that was not reported by the operator, followed by the train stopping between stations with passengers aboard for an extended period of time with no communication with the train operator. Approximately 43 minutes after the station overrun and then stopping between stations, the train operator stated that the train was moving. The train reached Franconia's Springfield Station just under an hour after the station overrun at Van Dorn Street. The operator prepared to operate the train back in the opposite direction, but this operator was subsequently arrested. The safety investigation continues in parallel with any criminal investigation and remains focused on safety improvements that may be needed. This concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Dr. Meyer?
I have a couple of questions to Chair Hart.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lobb.
Dr. Meyer, I wanted to better understand a couple of the issues here. One is the roadway worker issue. Apparently, we found that there were discrepancies in the course material between the procedures had been updated and the course material did not reflect the current requirements. Can you tell me how significant the changes between the old and the new material was?
There were several changes between the old and the new material, and one of the most important changes involved a cardinal rule that was different in the new material versus the old material. And I would point out that it was not only the training material, but also the actual tests that are used to certify the employees that needed to be updated to reflect the current rules and procedures.
So the cardinal rule is a significant rule, is that correct?
Right. Cardinal rules are rules that must be passed with 100% accuracy on these examinations.
Okay, and so at this point, we were confident that Washington Metro has upgraded the training, is that correct?
We observed yesterday in a training class to verify that current materials are being used both in the training and the testing. So yes.
Do we know how many people were trained with the incorrect information and the incorrect cardinal rule?
Metro has told us that it was approximately 700.
700 people?
That's correct.
Were given the wrong information?
That's correct.
What is Metro taking any action to correct this?
Yes, this is being corrected, and the training materials have been corrected, the tests have been corrected, and although the workers are not out of service, they will receive current training.
Okay, so we'll be following up on that. Is that correct?
Definitely.
Okay, I had a couple other questions regarding the operator training. I guess the issue was operators are supposed to receive 8 hours of essentially on-the-job training with just themselves and an instructor operating a train with no passengers on board. Is that the requirement?
That's correct. It's a basic instructional requirement as specified in their written training procedures and their agency safety plan for this 8 hours of instruction to be delivered in non-revenue service, non-passenger service from an instructor.
And there was Metro departed from that requirement, I guess. I know you had the example of an individual that only received 9 minutes of this on-the-job training instead of 8 hours. Is that correct?
That's correct. That was an example that came to us by way of a safety event as we were working with Metro to conduct the investigation.
And subsequent to that, we're hearing about 54 train operators. Did Metro provide that information?
Yes, that's information that Metro has stated publicly and provided to us.
And these 54 train operators did not receive the 8 hours of instruction, you know, without passengers and with the operator instructor on board. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding. And Ms. Samarasinha, do you have anything you'd want to add to that? Because as I mentioned in my remarks, these were materials that we received this morning and have been reviewing in parallel with preparing for this meeting.
No, I don't have any further information to add. Thank you.
So we don't know if how much actual on-the-job training with instructor these 54 had.
We will certainly look into that. As I'm sitting here this moment, I don't know if that's in the materials that we received this morning. We
Okay.
do know that we received records and data pertaining to these 54 individuals who needed to receive the instruction that they had not received previously, and that has mostly been accomplished now.
And I believe that you said that some of these operators did operate trains with another operator. Are these second operators? Are they instructors or are they just other operators?
There are other operators that Metro referred to as a mentor.
Okay, and essentially Metro substituted, operating a passenger train with passengers on board with another operator in the cab, a mentor, for this requirement that they have for 8 hours of instructor-led operation with no passengers on board. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And we heard early on that Metro had changed their requirements or their processes that they followed on operator training, and that what using a mentor was okay. Did we find out what the new requirements were, or were there new requirements?
Ms. Samarasinga, can you assist with that?
Sure. We did raise that question about the changes that Metro has and that we understood to have been enacted recently pertaining to the combination of training that we are talking about today. In the response that we received this morning from Metro also stated that those conversations have not been documented and therefore they cannot characterize what the changes are. So at this moment, we really cannot provide further details as to what it is that they had envisioned the evolution would be from what is documented and understood to be the procedures for training versus what they were enacting when we found out that they were making these changes without proper documentation. So at this moment, we really aren't able to characterize what those changes were.
So essentially there were no changes, and the Washington Metro should have been, following their procedures. Is that our impression?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question, Commissioner Lobby?
So are you saying that there were no changes to the program? There were no documents?
Yes,
the program,
that is correct.
And
Yes.
essentially, we would expect Washington Metro to follow the program they had in place, which required 8 hours of an operator operating a non-passenger train with a training instructor with them, not a mentor, a training instructor. That's what we expected to happen. Is that correct?
That is correct. There were no changes to the training, the documented training requirements that existed last month are the same documented requirements that exist today, and Metro should have complied with their own training procedures.
And subsequent to our bringing this to attention, 54 train operators were found who have not followed that process and are currently or have been retrained. Is that accurate?
Again, I would ask you to repeat the question. I don't think I followed what you were saying.
Well, Metro basically identified 54 operators that had not received 8 hours of on-the-job training on a non-passenger train with the training instructor.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
So if I may,
Yes, please, Commissioner Rush.
what I take away from this conversation essentially is that the petition that was filed by WMATA essentially appears to be moot at this point in time. Is that correct?
We have not communicated that to Metro as of this moment because we just received the information in response to our information request just this morning.
But at this point, there doesn't seem to be based on what was reported and based on our understanding of the information we received this morning, it seems that there is no disagreement with respect to the training at this point in time.
I believe that's a correct statement. Metro has told us they did not change their procedures and they have retrained these operators to comport with their procedures.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rush. I have a question, and that is, do we have any sense of why the people who should have known about the 8-hour requirement apparently didn't, so that we can try to take whatever measures are necessary to prevent this kind of error from happening again?
Ms. Samarasinha, do you have any information to contribute there?
Not specifically, aside from something that we remind Metro continuously, which is there are processes in place that instruct Metro in conducting changes to their existing policies, procedures, and practices. These are conducted through a review by various combinations of groups so that one single team or one single individual is not unilaterally making changes. And so in this instance, what we would ask Metro to do is, if there are changes that they are thinking of, that those things should be conducted through the existing procedures that ensures that a holistic approach is taken rather than adopting a tactical, narrow approach to making changes to whatever training criteria or procedures, as we are talking about here, had happened. Metro has told us that they have not changed the requirements that exist and that they will comply with this, which is great. That is not to say that if there are changes needed to improve training, which is the topic we are talking about, that those can undergo improvements, but they need to be done with a holistic mindset that involves all the necessary individuals at all the necessary levels of the organization, so that unintended safety consequences don't arise as a result of haphazard changes.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Meyer and Ms. Samarasinha. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners?
Just to follow up, Chair Hart.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lobby.
I see in the media there's talk about shortages of operators on Washington Metro, and that they're scrambling to hire more operators or train more operators. Certainly this and I would consider it a shortcut if the complete training was not provided. Is this shortcut? Is this related in any way to the operator shortage, or do we think that, you know, in their zeal to expedite getting more operators, that they're cutting a few corners? Is that a possibility?
I think that's a possibility, but I don't have anything to say definitively on that topic.
Okay, thank you. It was just a question I had in my mind, because I have heard in the press about these operator shortages, and certainly there must be a scramble to get more and more qualified. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lowry, and thank you, Dr. Meyer and Ms. Samarasinha. We will now move on to a status update on orders regarding returning the 7000 series rail cars into service. Ms. Samarasinha, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. We continue to oversee the Metro Rail's implementation of its return to service plan for the 7000 series rail cars. Metro Rail's plan and the submission of any revisions is required in accordance with the WMSC's December 29th, 2021 order. We continue to carry out our work based on the available safety data and information. The WMSC learned in late December that Metro Rail personnel had removed additional 7000 series rail cars from service with no communication to the WMSC based on measurement thresholds that had not been communicated to Metro Rail's frontline personnel. This created two issues. First, Metro Rail's engineers had determined that the cars with certain measurements should not be in service. However, they had not informed frontline maintenance personnel not to put such cars into service. This led, for example, to Metro Rail placing a car into service that met the thresholds its engineers had determined meant it should not be in service. Secondly, it introduced potential changes to the significance of data that Metrorail had been submitting related to ongoing 7000 series measurements, as this could impact the validity of that data for supporting a change to a longer inspection interval. The WMSC quickly communicated to Metrorail that additional information was needed before such a change. Metrorail provided a large volume of additional information the night of January 10th that responded to some of the issues. Our team evaluated that submission quickly and provided specific follow-up questions on January 13th. Metrorail responded on January 20th to those questions. Some of those responses contradicted previous information and documentation provided by Metrorail. The information and WMSC's continuing review of other Metrorail data provided the necessary safety assurances for a progression from a 4-day to a 7-day inspection cycle. We continue to review new information, data, and analysis on an ongoing basis, and we will continue to raise and resolve issues as they arise on an ongoing basis. That completes my presentation, Chair Hart. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Samarasinha. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Samarasinha? Okay, hearing none, we will now move on to our next item, which is
I
audit.
see Commissioner Rush.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I just want to make sure I understand the data issue here. That if WMATA was to use a stricter threshold than had been understood to be the threshold for removing cars, then you would get cars removed from service before we would get an opportunity to see if in fact that they would cross the threshold, at which point everybody agreed that the cars should be removed. So we wouldn't have a data set which would reveal the actual threat of cars with the wheels migrating past the threshold. I'm not sure I'm explaining myself correctly, but I just want to make sure I understand what the data issue is going forward, because this is important for future analyses of data, that we make sure we're all on the same page as I understand the data question.
That is correct. That is the data issue that we are talking about.
Okay, and even though the commission staff has concluded it's certainly appropriate to go to a 7-day inspection threshold, we still need to resolve this data threshold issue for any future actions that we might take with respect to modifications of the inspection interval.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I understood it.
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Okay, Commissioner Lobby.
Maybe more an observation that it's a little bit concerning. I know that the thresholds are more conservative, but there's going to be conclusions made from the data set, and if the data is not consistent, if it's not based on the same inputs, then there is the danger of making the wrong conclusion, and the conclusions may be when trains are allowed to go back into service, what the inspection criteria may be, or other things. So once the data is compromised by making changes midstream, the conclusions that you come up with later from the data can be suspect. So we need to be careful of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby, for that observation. Are there any other questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Samarasinha? Okay, we will now move on to our next agenda item, which is audits, with an update from Program Coordination Specialist Ashley Rhodes. Ms. Rhodes?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Since the last public meeting, we have issued our audits of track maintenance and of Metrorail's internal safety review program. The track audit was issued on December 14th, 2022. Metrorail requested, and the WMSC granted, an extension for Metrorail to provide draft caps to us by January 25th, 2023. The internal safety review audit report was issued on January 4th, 2023. We are preparing for an exit conference with Metrorail to discuss preliminary findings from our structures audit. We will then develop a draft report to transmit to Metrorail. We are currently reviewing documents as part of our roadway maintenance machine audit. On-site work and interviews begin soon. On-site activities for our next audit of automatic train control and signaling are scheduled for March. As with each of our audits, the work on these audits includes extensive reviews of Metrorail documents, on-site work such as interviews, and, where relevant, site visits to various parts of the Metrorail system. Our audits assess Metrorail against the relevant criteria, such as the requirements of Metrorail's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, requirements specified in other Metrorail documents, such as SOPs and orders, and regulatory requirements. These audits cover all aspects of Metrorail's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan over a 3-year period and are designed to proactively identify safety issues. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Rhodes? Okay, seeing none, we will now take up the next agenda item, which is corrective action plans. Presenting this agenda item will be Audits and CAPS Program Manager, Mr. Davis Raddick. Mr. Raddick?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Since the last public meeting, we have closed 8 CAPs and approved 8 Metrorail CAP proposals for implementation. When Metrorail develops corrective action plans to address the safety deficiencies identified by WMSC findings and recommendations, or other issues specified by the WMSC program standard, Metrorail submits these plans to the WMSC for review and approval. Each CAP is a specific plan to address a specific safety deficiency, so the proactive identification of these deficiencies by the WMSC and later the resolution of these deficiencies by Metrorail is part of the continuous safety improvement process. After Metrorail submits acceptable CAP proposals that will address the safety deficiency, Metrorail is responsible for implementing its corrective action plans on the schedule documented in the CAP. We conduct our audits and oversight activities on an ongoing basis, and this has led to audits which to this point have each included findings being issued every few months. Corrective actions to address each finding typically take months or years to implement, as the CAPs are designed to systematically address issues identified by the finding. CAPs typically also include documentation of implementation prior to closure by the WMSC. The systemic nature of required fixes and the WMSC's detailed ongoing work means that the raw number of open CAPs may increase over time. The existence of CAPs demonstrates the ongoing work toward continuous improvement. Even after a CAP is closed, the WMSC also monitors Metrorail's actions on an ongoing basis through our audit, inspection, and other oversight activities. Regarding the latest CAP proposals submitted by Metrorail, we have now approved 9 communications audit CAPs for implementation. Regarding the order we issued August 4th on automatic train control room inspection, maintenance, and cleaning, that CAP was approved for implementation earlier this month. In addition, we have continued exchanges with Metrorail regarding compliance with other parts of that order. Overall, Metrorail currently has 127 open WMSC CAPs that it is in the process of implementing. This is in addition to those CAPs that remain under development. Since the last public meeting, the WMSC has closed 8 CAPs. These CAPs include 2 from the 2020 audit of the ROCC, or the Rail Operations Control Center, and that one of those CAPs was C55, which resulted from a finding that Metrorail was not following or clearly defining its fatigue risk management procedures in the ROCC. This CAP included a fatigue assessment that resulted in a new fatigue policy that Metrorail implemented. Our team continues to oversee Metrorail's actions in the ROCC, including as it relates to recent reductions in available staffing that could impact this CAP implementation and other safety progress in the ROC, or ROCC. They have a further regularly scheduled meeting on this issue tomorrow. Another CAP is C58, which included an assessment of ROCC controller responsibilities including a new process and cognitive task analysis. These are positive steps. However, as noted earlier, the WMSC is reviewing information provided related to other ROCC caps that raise potential staffing concerns. 3 other closed caps address findings from the 2021 automatic train control and signaling audit. As part of C-104, Metrorail updated ATC manuals and communicated these updates to its staff. As part of C-108, Metrorail defined expectations and working relationships among departments involved in the engineering, maintenance, and construction of the ATC system and assets. As part of C-109, Metrorail established a standardized process to prioritize and move forward ATC capital projects. Another closed cap relates to a finding from the 2021 Fitness for Duty audit. As part of C-126, Metrorail provided reasonable suspicion training to supervisors. This training is required to ensure drug and alcohol testing is properly conducted and that personnel suspected of being under the influence are removed from service. One closed cap relating to a finding from the 2021 high voltage and traction power audit was C-158, which implemented a process and training on that process to effectively prioritize corrective maintenance work orders. This addressed a recommendation from that audit. The final closed cap to discuss today relates to a finding from the 2022 station maintenance elevators and escalators audit. This was for C-208, and it involved a staffing assessment and work assignment updates to ensure an adequate number of personnel are assigned to each shift and an area of responsibility for plant maintenance. This also included addressing recruitment and retention for vacant positions. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Raddick. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Raddick? Okay, seeing none. Next agenda item is an update on some of the WMSC's latest activities overseeing Metrorail's safety certification process. Mr. Sahu?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Hart. So Metrorail's safety certification process is a critical element of Metrorail's safety management system, consistently identifying hazards and mitigating the likelihood and severity of those hazards in a systematic way as documented in Metrorail's policy and procedures is what provides for the overall safety of the Metrorail system. To achieve this, Metrorail must carry out all elements of its safety requirements without bypassing any part of this holistic safety process. We oversee Metrorail's safety certification through field observations, document and data review, and regular meetings with Metrorail, as well as by observing Metrorail safety certification committees and working groups. We are continuing to monitor Metrorail's implementation of mitigations designated as part of Metrorail's Silver Line Phase 2 safety certification. Other projects that require our concurrence before Metrorail places them into passenger service include the new Potomac Yard Station and Metrorail's possible initiation of automatic train operation or automatic door operation. We are continuing to engage with Metrorail regarding outstanding issues regarding their automatic train operation and automatic door operation efforts, as we have for several years. ATO is a system Metrorail was designed with, but that few current personnel have operated or maintained, and that it has not been used in the current operating environment. Metrorail's operations have also changed since Metrorail ceased automatic train operations in 2009. That includes changes related to conducting work and roadway worker protection. The WMSC's automatic train control and signaling team, as well as my colleagues assisting me in oversight of Metrorail's safety certification process, continue our careful oversight and consistent communication with Metrorail. This is a significant effort that requires Metrorail to ensure its entire organization is ready for such a change to activate these features for the first time in the current environment. We are awaiting further information and responses from Metrorail to our latest questions and concerns. Another major project that Metrorail is carrying out and conducting its safety certification of is the Potomac Yard Station. This is also a project that we have designated for an in-depth WMSC review of Metrorail's safety certification process, and that therefore requires our concurrence that Metrorail has completed its process before Metrorail opens the station to riders. Potomac Yard is an infill station Metrorail is building on the blue and yellow lines in Alexandria, along with associated new track and systems. We have observed progress on the site and continue to review documentation. We also continue to maintain awareness of Metrorail work on automated wayside inspection systems, AWIS. Metrorail describes these systems as a potential use to capture an array of measurements from rail cars that are in use to provide an additional layer of safety. As we communicated earlier this year, we will review the first location for our concurrence, and Metrorail will follow that same validation and examination process for the other 7 sites. Similarly, we conduct oversight work of Metrorail's other safety certification activities. It is in all cases Metrorail's responsibility to carry out this work in accordance with its policies and procedures. Regarding work toward a new rail operations center facility in Alexandria, we reminded Metrorail last week that it must ensure its recording capabilities are fully in place and functional before activation to ensure the opportunity for ongoing supervisory oversight and productive incident investigations that can effectively result in continuous safety improvement. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Sahu. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Sahu? I had a question for the benefit of the listening audience. What is an infill station? You said the Potomac Yard Station is an infill station. What does that mean?
Yes, Chair Hart. So infill just means it's a station that's being added to an existing system. So
That's
Okay.
similar to the Noma Gallaudet station, if you remember on the red line several years ago, was filled in. It was infilled into the existing red line.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Sahu? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to safety event investigation reports that are being presented today. We will hear presentations on all of the reports and then consider a single motion on all of the reports that we are prepared to adopt. If any commissioner wishes to remove a report from the group that we will consider for adoption in a single vote, please indicate that at the end of the presentation of that report. Before we do that, I understand Investigation Program Manager Adam Quigley has a broader update on where Metrorail's corrective actions stand related to past reports and other WMSC oversight activities as we have just begun this new year. Mr. Quigley?
Yes, thank you, Chair Hart.
Yeah.
As you know, each investigation report lists corrective actions specific to the incident that was investigated based on investigations of safety events from January 2022 through November 2022. Metrorail developed 120 corrective actions directly due to safety event investigations. Metrorail has documented that 58% of these are completed. I work with Metrorail's investigation team on an ongoing basis to monitor and progress on these corrective actions. This includes check-ins on a bi-weekly basis. In addition to the corrective actions Metrorail develops during the course of an investigation, the WMSC has issued multiple findings and orders that require Metrorail to systemically address issues that have been identified through safety event investigations. As Ms. Rhodes mentioned, Metrorail has more than 100 open corrective action plans that it is implementing to address WMSC findings and recommendations. Among these, a number of CAPs relate to themes that the WMSC has identified through multiple safety event investigations. For example, our communications audit issued in September identified a lack of procedures for communication system inspections, incomplete training, and that Metrorail is not ensuring work is properly completed. Finding 4 of this audit was that Metrorail personnel are not effectively communicating, responding to, and identifying issues related to trouble calls pertaining to communication systems. Metrorail closes communications related corrective maintenance repair tickets without effectively identifying, documenting, and addressing issues. In addition to documents obtained during the audit, this finding cited safety event investigations where communications personnel stated there were no radio system issues despite documented communication problems during the event. Similarly, the rail operations audit issued in April included items related to past safety event investigations and identifying opportunities to prevent future safety events. The rail operations audit found that elements of Metrorail have a culture that accepts non-compliance with written operational rules, instructions, and procedures. In addition to the documents and data obtained specifically for the audit, this was also demonstrated by safety events cited in the report. Our fitness for duty audit required Metrorail to address that it is ignoring its minimum daily release or rest period, requirements in its fatigue risk management policy. In addition to audits, we have required other Metrorail actions. For example, our order issued last May regarding Metrorail's improper power restoration required Metrorail to implement a series of safety steps and to revise and implement a corrective action plan. This was to stop Metrorail from continuing to put its personnel at risk of serious injury or death by repeatedly bypassing safety redundancies and power restoration procedures. This step followed prior WMATA commitments that Metrorail did not carry out, which led to several safety events. In August of 2021, we issued an order related to Metrorail not following its safety certification process. This followed related items identified in multiple audits and safety event investigations. Metrorail is in the process of implementing its corrective action plan. In addition to these and other actions and orders, investigations are also an input into our consideration of areas of higher risk that may require additional inspections by our subject matter experts. This may lead to specific questions in regular meetings with Metrorail, to field visits, or to additional data reviews. We are continuing our robust investigation and oversight program in 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Quigley before we move on to the investigation reports that will be before us today?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
That's Commissioner Lobby.
I think it's very interesting. We have 120 corrective actions that these are these initiated and owned by Washington Metro?
Yes.
And these are different from the 100 caps, which basically are initiated from Washington Metro Safety Commission's investigation. Is that correct?
Audits. So the RCAs that we're talking about, the 120 come directly from the investigation report itself and through the investigation.
So is there overlap between the two, between the 120 corrective actions and the 100 caps that you mentioned?
Davis, I saw you pop one if you wanted to answer that.
So Commissioner Lobby, to help out here, there's kind of two different groups of things. The recommended corrective actions generally come about from investigations, and the findings and corrective action plans that I spoke of earlier about the 127 come about primarily through findings from and recommendations from audits, but they can come about from any oversight activity we do, but they're a different bucket, but they do have some overlap in their subject areas between the RCAs and the WMSC caps.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's encouraging that Washington Metro is finding issues that need to be addressed on their own. Certainly, it's our role to do the audits and to come up with some of the safety issues, but I'm pleased to see Metro identifying corrective actions on their own, and it looks like 58% of them have been put in place. So I think that's good news across the board. Thank you.
And if I may, I'd just like to thank Mr. Quigley for not only the presentation today, but also his careful work with Metro and tracking of the RCAs, the recommended corrective actions that arise from these safety event investigations. We had wanted to present this and share this information with the commissioners today based on comments in prior meetings, just to make sure that commissioners saw that these corrective actions that are noted in each of the safety event investigations do actually get tracked and resolved. And we just wanted to share some of that with you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby, for the question, and thank you, Dr. Meyer, for helping out with the answer. Any more questions from Mr. Quigley before we move on to the investigation reports? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Quigley, the floor is yours to present the first investigation report.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0195 relates to an electrical arcing in the Red Line Tunnel between DuPont Circle and Woodley Park stations that led to an evacuation for life safety reasons and substantial damage. The event began on July 30th, 2022 and continued into July 31st, 2022. The electrical arcing from cables on the tunnel wall continued for more than 6 hours. The event demonstrated the need for improvement in Metrorail's emergency preparedness, incident response, and coordination processes and systems. During this event, Metrorail personnel made assumptions that were contrary to available information, specifically repeated descriptions of the event as an arcing insulator, extended the duration, and likely increased the severity of this event. At approximately 9:07 p.m., the arcing and smoke triggered a fire alarm in a drainage pumping station between Woodley Park and DuPont Circle stations. The arcing also led to a down track circuit, a location unexpectedly showing as occupied in the automatic train control system. Metrorail did not recognize that these two items, the alarm and the track circuit issue, could be linked. After the alarm and the track circuit issue, a rail controller directed a train operator of an inbound train at Woodley Park Station to hold the train at that station. There was no repeat back of this instruction. The train operator moved the train toward the smoke fire alarm location and down track circuit. After moving into the tunnel, the train operator reported to the ROC that they had lost speed commands. This was due to the down track circuit, which the investigation determined was caused by the arcing and smoke that had set off the alarm. The ROC radio rail traffic controller directed the train operator to continue to move this train with passengers on board towards DuPont Circle Station and to conduct a track inspection. Metrorail rules require trains used for track inspections to be out of service. After moving closer to the location of the smoke and down track circuit, the train operator reported sparks coming from the tunnel wall. The train operator moved to the opposite end of the train to move riders back to the Woodley Park Station. However, the rail traffic controller did not give permission to move for several minutes after the train operator was ready. This delay in moving passengers out of an area with smoke was due to the rail controller spending this time communicating with personnel such as train operators on other parts of the red line, rather than this train operator directly involved in the emergency. Metrorail also did not activate tunnel ventilation fans during this period. This was partly due to communication problems within the ROC, such as difficulty the button rail traffic controller had finding the correct number to call for the plant fan desk. Metrorail did not treat the fire alarm as a report of smoke. Only when smoke moved into DuPont Circle Station and was reported by the station manager who had been sent to investigate the alarm did Metrorail treat this event as smoke and electrical arcing. Metrorail's response did not identify that the drainage pumping station is in the tunnel between Woodley Park and DuPont Circle stations, and instead treated the alarm as if it were in the DuPont Circle station. This is in part due to the way the alarm is displayed to personnel in the Rail Operations Control Center. However, one person in the ROC from the Maintenance Operations Center did identify the correct location and conveyed the correct location in an initial call to DC's 911 call center. However, a subsequent call by the ROC manager identified the location as the DuPont Circle station. Rail 1, the operational leader of the ROC during a given shift, did not remain at their position during this event. Instead, they were directly instructing controllers at the console. Because of Rail 1 deviating from procedures, other key personnel did not have consistent, accurate, real-time information exchanges with operations personnel. Rail 1 is supposed to work with the fire liaison and Metrorail's mission assurance coordinator. During the event, despite the report from the train operator that the arcing was on the tunnel wall, Metrorail supervisory personnel in the ROC and later transit police and other personnel on the scene stated that the event was an arcing insulator. In addition to the train operator reporting the arcing on the wall, de-energization of third rail power would stop an arcing insulator. But this arcing continued after third rail power was de-energized. Metrorail dispatched its personnel responsible for third rail power, but not those responsible for other power systems. Approximately an hour and a half after the arcing began, a Metrorail emergency response team entered the roadway. They identified that the arcing was continuing. While returning to the platform, they reported something that sounded like an explosion. DC Fire and EMS identified that Metrorail's third rail red tag outages did not address the electrical hazard and did not enter the roadway. After Metrorail's personnel responsible for power, other than Third Rail Power, responded, they did not know how to de-energize power to the area. This contributed to the arcing continuing for additional time for an eventual total of more than 6 hours. Eventually, these personnel cut a connection at a junction box, which stopped the arcing. The duration and intensity of the arcing damaged cables and other equipment in the tunnel. This required an extended period of repairs, which led to an extended service disruption. As a result of this event, Metrorail developed several corrective actions. The day after the event began, ROC leadership issued a memorandum reminding personnel that trains must be out of service and without passengers if they are to be used for a track inspection. Metrorail also issued a memorandum regarding the required interaction and coordination between ROC operation managers and the mission assurance coordinator. Metrorail repaired the communications and other cables damaged in the area. Metrorail is conducting inspection of underground electrical infrastructure that is not part of the Third Rail system. These are systems that Metrorail refers to as low voltage due to it being less than the Third Rail voltage. The inspections were focused on electrical hazards such as loose cables, broken covers, corrosion, and water leaks. Metrorail committed to documenting and addressing identified issues. Metrorail is also evaluating procedures for dispatching maintenance personnel to event scenes and has committed to addressing issues related to its incident response. Beyond those items as part of the investigation, Metrorail has several open corrective action plans related to the issues that this investigation identified. Metrorail is implementing corrective action plans related to the WMSC's 2021 audit of emergency management and fire and life safety programs. These included corrective action plans to address the findings that Metrorail does not follow the incident command system, that Metrorail created the mission assurance coordinator position without documented training, responsibilities, communication, or coordination, and that Metrorail's calls to 911 call centers are inconsistent, incomplete, and contribute to delayed or ineffective emergency response. Metrorail has also been conducting a pilot of smoke alarms that could be used to detect the presence and location of fire and smoke throughout the tunnel and station network as part of its work to address NTSB recommendation R-16-16. The NTSB classifies this as open acceptable response. Examples of other related CAPs that Metrorail is developing included those related to the communications audit issued last year. Regarding the additional inspections needed for electrical equipment, Metrorail refers to as low voltage. Metrorail recently publicly announced a reorg that some personnel have described as combining power personnel for both Third Rail Power and other power systems under one department. Metrorail has canceled meetings with the WMSC on details of this reorganization. WMSC will monitor Metrorail's actions in this and other areas that will require multiple procedural revisions under Metrorail's change management process for Metrorail to ensure the level of safety that Metrorail has committed to. That completes his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
I have a couple of questions, Chair Hart.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lobby.
I'm interested in Mr. Quigley in this track circuit that went down. What happens when a track circuit goes down? Does it give the trains a red signal or what?
It takes their speed commands away. So the track circuit shows occupied as if there was a train there. It's like a safety default. So when the track circuit goes down, it shows as occupied. So trains lose speed commands entering that location.
So if they don't have the speed commands, can they still proceed or do they just stop?
There's the procedure is to stop and contact ROC immediately when you lose speed commands and to get granted a permissive block. So a permissive block would allow them to continue to move speeds no greater than 15 miles an hour.
Okay, so it doesn't automatically stop the train. It's up to the operator to respond to it, correct?
They will have to stop because the speed commands will be taken away. They will have to come to a complete stop.
Okay, does that happen automatically?
No, the operator. Well, it's basically like, so you and I are from the FRA, a penalty break. So, you know, a penalty break is applied and they have to stop.
Okay, so it is automatic somewhat. I'm interested in, you know, there was miscommunication in that the operator of this train that left Woodley Park didn't hear the order to hold on the platform. And this has been an issue because, you know, the operators are sometimes their heads out the window looking boarding passengers and things like this, and we often have issues where they don't hear the instruction. Does the controller at the Rock, does he have the ability to basically just put a red signal at the end of the platform so that people can't proceed past that platform?
In specific locations, there's a feature called a turn back. So if there's not an interlocking at like a red signal at the end of the platform, in most locations there is a turn back. If they take the turn back away, that takes speed commands away from a train. So you could technically hold a train at a platform. At this location, there was not a interlocking, so there wasn't a signal or a turn back to be used.
So the only option the controller had was to call them on the radio and tell them to hold on the platform.
Yes, a few times. This RTC repeated a few times, you know, trying to get a hold of the operator to stop.
Okay, very good. And you know, I did have a question about under what circumstances it's appropriate for a controller to instruct an operator to perform a track inspection, but I think you covered that in your presentation, that the only time that can happen is if the train's out of service and there's no passengers on board. Is that correct?
Correct. So in this case, when they finally did get a hold of the operator, they should have sent the train back to Woodley Park instead of allowing it to proceed through the hazardous location area.
So I'm interested in, you probably don't have the answer, but why would an operator who knows he's got passengers on board, when he's asked to do a track inspection, why wouldn't he say, no, I can't do a track inspection?
That's a good question, sir. I do not have the answer to that.
Okay, we have two people that potentially know all the rules, and you know, one tells them to do something that's against the rules and the other does it. I think that would be interesting to better understand that, if there's some hesitancy of an operator to basically, you know, follow instructions just because it comes from the controller.
Absolutely.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Lowry. Commissioner Bob?
Yeah, Mr. Quigley, were there passengers on the trains, or did they return back to Woodley Park Station?
So the initial train that was asked to do the track inspection, it did have passengers on board. When the operator came to the location that was arcing and reported it, they reverse ends and they took the passengers back away from the hazard, the arcing.
So in essence, they were out of danger of any passengers, were all out of danger because they returned back.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, there seemed to be a delay, but they did take them back to the previous station and offload.
Mr. Quigley, I have a question. I'm curious about the arcing. Apparently the arcing involved low voltage arcing and not traction power arcing. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
But it went on for several hours. Is that unusual that arcing event would go on for several hours?
Well, as we mentioned, that, you know, Metrorail thought it was an arcing insulator, so they dropped down third rail power thinking it was an arcing insulator, but that did not take down the power to these junction boxes that were arcing. So that's why it continued to arc for several hours until they realized that they need to cut power to that low voltage box.
And I would only add that low voltage is used here in the same sense that Metro uses it to mean less than traction power voltage. It doesn't necessarily mean like microvolts or a small amount of energy.
Right. So is there the traction power shows on a big board that shows the entire system. Is there a similar sort of big board system for non-traction power?
I believe it's all tied in together. I don't know if we can get Pino to Mr. Sahu to help out with that.
Yeah, Chair Hart. So they should be able to see they call them AC switchboard rooms. That's what powers your loads for your actual stations.
Right.
So what they maybe should have done is once they realized it wasn't a traction power issue, the typical underground, below ground stations have 2 AC switchboard rooms. So they should have, they do have remote capability to de-energize the utility feed in those locations. And then the caveat is a drainage pumping station has dual feeds because it is a critical system that operates those fans in case of an emergency. So you'd want to, if you couldn't pinpoint exactly which source it is, you would you de-energize the AC switchboard rooms in both, I think it's Woodley Park and DuPont Circle here, and that would kill the utility feeds. It's not an optimal condition because you do have passengers in those stations, but the lighting is on emergency feed, so you would have however many foot candles for passengers to be able to exit the station or move around. So I think that's probably what should have been done.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
Dino, Chair Hart, just a
please.
quick follow-up question to Mr. Sahu.
Yes.
Is there capability in the Rail Traffic Control Center to see these locations remotely? I think that was what Chair Hart was raising the question specifically on.
Yeah, I believe so. And that's in regards to the AC switchboard rooms. They wouldn't be able to see where that arcing incident happened.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Samarasinger, for the clarifying question. That's helpful. Any other questions from Mr. Quigley regarding this event from any of the commissioners? All right, seeing none, Mr. Quigley, please present the next investigation report.
Thank you, Chair Hart. This investigation relates to an improper roadway worker protection and therefore the near miss of a collision with workers on the red line tracks on July 16th, 2022. Track inspectors had to unexpectedly rush out of the way of a speeding train. The track inspection crew was working with proper permissions between Medical Center and Grosvenor Strathmore stations. The train operator was briefed by an advanced mobile flagger at Grosvenor Station. Metro Rail created the AMF to read a script to a train operator approaching a mobile work crew. The script reminds train operators to travel at a reduced speed and follow roadway worker protection requirements, such as the use of the train horn. CCTV shows that this face-to-face communication occurred for this train. The train operator departed the station and operated at normal speed, not reduced speed. The track inspectors noticed the train speeding at them, and as they later described, it jumped out of the way. The track inspection crew reported this near miss. The roadway worker in charge reported that the train passed at excessive speed and the operator did not sound their horn. The train operator did not report this emergency as required by Metro Rail rules and continued on after briefly stopping beyond the workroom. Vehicle data showed that the train traveled up to 50 miles per hour after leaving the station. The train operator applied emergency braking, which led to the train stopping approximately 820 feet after the brakes were applied. Following this event, the train operator claimed they were distracted by a rider contacting them on the emergency intercom about a possible rider with a weapon, and explained that this is why they did not follow roadway worker protection procedures. The operator did not communicate to the work crew they put at risk or to the rock. Vehicle data reviewed based on the operator's statements demonstrated that there was no intercom activation. In addition, there was no request made for transit police response by the operator or any other individual. The WMSC communicated to Metro Rail's Safety Department leadership the apparent gaps between the operator's statement and the available data. Due to this and other events, Metrorail emphasized the importance of roadway worker protection to rail transportation personnel. Metrorail added modules related to advanced mobile flagging procedures to RWP Level 2 training and distributed a safety bulletin on AMF procedures. Other Metrorail corrective action plans related to this event include C0181 to address the WMSC's rail operations audit finding last year that elements of Metrorail have a culture that accepts noncompliance with written operational rules, instructions, and manuals. Metrorail committed to completing this cap in October of 2024. The WMSC meets regularly with Metrorail regarding roadway worker protection, including raising concerns that Metrorail has not acted upon. Metrorail recently told the WMSC it plans further changes to the RWP standards set to take effect July 1st. We continue to monitor WMATA's work and to update its RWP program. Thank you. That completes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
I've got a couple of questions.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lowry.
Mr. Quigley, we've heard about speed commands. Typically, I guess the requirement is if you have track inspectors in the tunnel, you're supposed to proceed at a restricted speed. The speed commands, is that only one level, or could you basically have a speed command that said 15 miles an hour or 20 miles per hour or whatever?
So there are features where they can turn what they call couplers if you want to reduce the normal speed commands in a location. But you have to go out there and physically turn. ATC personnel have to be dispatched to the TCR room to turn these couplers in specific locations.
So when they have a speed command, there's no restriction on what speed they can go at, right?
No, there is. It's based on the section of track and curvature and track profile.
Okay, but you can't enforce a 50 mile per hour speed from a station between stations, for example, without going and actually modifying the system.
Right, you'd have to go out directly to the field to do that.
Okay. I think it's interesting that the employee talked about, having an emergency and talking to people on the intercom and then reviewing the data, the event recorder data, the intercom wasn't used. So essentially, it seems that the operator came up with a story on why he didn't proceed at restricted speed. Is that somewhat accurate there?
Yes, and just because you keep referring to restricted speed, so the procedure is based on speed commands. They would basically operate at half of what their speed commands say. So if it says 40, they're supposed to be doing 20 miles an hour until they approach personnel on the roadway, and then stop.
Okay.
But you are correct. Yes, we couldn't find any data to verify what we were told in the interview of the emergency going on this train.
And then I look at the corrective actions that Metro took, and it says that, and these are some things they completed. The division superintendent reviewed roadway worker protection safety notice with the train operator, and Officer Rail Transportation Management conducted a ways of working safety sprint with emphasis on AMF RWP compliance, and then finally, the train operator completed roadway worker protection requalification. And, based on all this and having a near miss in a tunnel and then coming up with a story about talking to people on the intercom, I was surprised at the final sentence of this summary, which says Metro Rail conducted an additional review and the Office of Rail Transportation determined that low-level discipline was appropriate. What exactly is low-level discipline?
I believe this operator was, they have a point system where they're given points for rule violations, and I believe they were given 8 points for this violation.
So is this typical, in your view, is this appropriate for putting roadway workers at risk and then lying about it?
And it doesn't match with Metro Rail's previous actions they've taken with another operator. I don't know if you remember I think we had a near miss between Fort Cotton and Tacoma where they disqualified that operator and the supervisor for lying. So a little inconsistent here, but.
Was there any explanation on why they're using this low-level discipline instead of, throwing the book at the guy?
Not that I can recall, sir.
Okay, thank you.
If I just may add, because Bob took the words right out of my mouth, because I focused on that too when I was reading the background materials for this. It strikes me, I hope this is a one-off, because this is not favorable from a safety culture, trying to establish a good safety culture perspective. When you get an employee who not only violated the rules, but flat out lied, apparently, with respect to what took place in the subsequent investigation. This is completely contrary to establishing a good safety culture at WMATA. And if we were to see, repeat occurrences like this, boy, that would call into question the approach WMATA is taking with respect to its employees. I just want to make that observation.
The staff doesn't disagree at all, and assures you we will pay very close attention to this sort of thing in the future.
Thanks to all of you. I had that very same comment that it's one thing not to follow the rules. It's another thing to prevaricate in the course of an investigation and in order to try to remove blame from yourself. So I'm very troubled by that as well. So thank you, staff, for bird dogging that issue and going after it. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. Quigley? Okay, thank you. And the next one, investigations analyst Natalie Keyrose will present the next investigation report. Ms. Keyrose.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0197 relates to an evacuation for life safety reasons due to a fire that was deliberately set on a train at Easter Market Station on September 9th, 2022. The train operator and station manager responded and put out the fire. Riders were safely evacuated. The train operator was evaluated for smoke inhalation. A rider properly notified the train operator, and the train operator properly reported the fire to the ROCC. During the response, the train operator experienced radio transmission issues and borrowed the station manager's radio. This led to some difficulties for personnel attempting to communicate with the station manager regarding the station evacuation. This investigation determined a rider deliberately set a fire in the area of 2 seats at the end of rail car 3286. The train operator and station manager involved in this event effectively put out this fire and helped passengers exit safely. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Keyrose. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Keyrose?
I have a couple of questions, Chair Hart.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lowry.
We hear a lot about this NIMS and ICS. I guess NIMS is National Incident Management System, and ICS is a incident command system, and that Metro doesn't follow these requirements. Do they say that they follow them in their documentation? I mean, are NIMS and ICS, is this a voluntary type of requirement, or is this something that Washington Metro must follow?
No, it's not voluntary. They must follow the ICS, and they do attempt or try, and sometimes they are successful and sometimes they're not. In this case, it was a successful evacuation.
Okay, and I was looking at some of the write-up here, and it talked about, it said it doesn't comply with Metro Rail doesn't comply with the NIMS ICS requirements, such as the use of plain language. Can you explain that? Why plain language was mentioned, or is that the only thing they're not complying with?
Yeah, they have they refer to some individuals as like an on-scene commander. I think Richard David might be probably the best one to expand on that. Richard, if you're available on that, I know that's a big thing for you.
Yeah, it's just that NIMS uses a national standard, and what WMATA does, they have a tendency to make up their own acronyms or their own names of different individuals, and then they kind of place them into the system, which causes a lot of confusion with the responding fire departments or police departments, etc.
So the police department, fire department are looking for someone with a particular title, and Washington Metro has changed that to something different, right?
That is correct.
Okay, that makes sense. Last question here. I noticed CAP C0162 said it was created to address this finding in February 2022, but not scheduled to be completed until January 2025. So that's 3 years, essentially 3 years from February 2022, 2 years from today. Why is it taking so long to do this?
They have different deliverables in the CAPs, what they're going step by step. So one, they had to establish a program. Two is pretty much like training within the program. Then it's the implementation of the program. And then at the end is when they will certify the program and
so are they essentially starting with a blank sheet of paper on this, or?
They're similar to what they used to have with their SOP. They're trying to match it, but then they're trying to tailor it more towards the NIM system. They're in training now. They in the process of getting about 1,700 people through with this first, they call it the IMF incident management framework. So they're in the process of doing that now, but like they said, with some of these other CAPs, we're following it and we're making corrections as they go, because they, like Natalie said, sometimes they get it right and sometimes they don't. So it's a work in progress.
Okay, and I'm not trying to criticize staff or anything. I just I know that not following the NIMS ICS procedures is a common theme in many of these incidents, and I'm just surprised that it would take them 3 years to really get their arms around it. And that's a frustration I have with Metro. It's a big organization, but some of these are important issues that they seem to take an awful lot of time to resolve.
So let me kick this to
those answers.
But let me kick it to Sharmila just a moment to bring this conversation to a conclusion.
Sure. Commissioner Lobby, so there are steps that Metro follows in order to ensure that when there is a finding that we denote that there are deficiencies, multiple deficiencies in a given functional area, like in this case, incident management framework and not being compliant with the National Incident Management System and protocols and conventions. Metro Rail starts by making sure that they are making a full evaluation of understanding as to what the gaps are, essentially a gap analysis. And they build from that point forward in building the program, in putting the procedures to enact the program, in making sure impacted personnel are trained. And then that is when they can assert back to us that they have fully addressed the finding and the deficiencies denoted in the finding. In this case, the fact that they do not comply with the incident command structure that is part and parcel of the National Incident Management System, which they are compliant with and stated that they will be compliant with in their program documents.
Thank you for that. That helps me understand the issue.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Marsinga, for chiming in with that and helping out. Are there any more questions from Ms. Keyros on this investigation report? Okay, hearing none, Ms. Keyros, would you please present the next investigation report?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0198 relates to an evacuation for life safety reasons of Rhode Island Avenue, Brentwood Station at around 5 p.m. on September 19th, 2022. This was due to a threat to blow up the station. The Metro Transit Police Department responded to the threat, but did not notify the Rail Operations Control Center. The Mission Assurance Coordinator in the ROCC overheard MTPD radio communications about the event. This led to the ROCC informing Transit Police a train was on the platform. As the train was departing, MTPD told the ROCC to hold the train. Train service was stopped through the station. MTPD attempted to call back the Office of Customer Service call center for more information about the threat, but the call center had closed for the day. During the response, Metrorail did not follow its emergency response processes, including the incident command process. This contributed to inadequate communication among transit police, the station manager, and personnel in the ROCC. In addition, personnel reported radio communication system issues during the event. Following this event, Metrorail reminded station managers to monitor their radios during emergencies. Metrorail is also implementing or developing a number of corrective action plans that relate to this event. These include corrective action plans to address the WMSC's 2021 finding that Metrorail does not consistently follow incident command system requirements and associated caps. In addition, Metrorail is developing a corrective action plan to address the WMSC's September 2022 communications audit, finding that Metrorail is not effectively responding to and identifying issues related to trouble calls pertaining to communication systems. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Key Rose. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Key Rose? I'm just personally astounded by how long we've been hearing about communications difficulties. I mean, it's like they're intractable, like they can never be fixed. I'd like a little background on why the communications situation is so complex and unfixable.
I'm not sure I understand that question. So maybe before Ms. Quiroz tries to answer it, I'm hoping that Ms. Samarasinha and I can make sure that we understand your question.
It just seems to me that communications difficulties are so endemic that I almost feel like we're not making any progress. I'm sure that can't be correct, but it just seems like, every time we turn around, there's another communications difficulty, and I just don't understand why that is such a problem, why it's so complex to be such a problem.
Ms. Samarasinha, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Dr. Meyer and Chair Hart. In talking about communications, there are multiple aspects that we ourselves have issued findings to Metrorail on, and where there are corrective action plans, where communications as it pertains to equipment, inspections, maintenance, repair activities, training of communications personnel, all of those things are being handled through various corrective action plans that are currently underway, which Metrorail is working on addressing. So it is recognized that there are multiple points of failure when we talk about communications in general, including the practitioners who communicate over these systems, where that needs to be improved as well. So there are multiple activities underway that are addressing the whole host of issues that we have talked about today as it pertains to communication, and things that we have talked in the past, as we've discussed various investigations in the past that had pointed to either the lack of practitioner communication or the lack of systems being maintained to accommodate and carry out communication channels.
Well, thank you. That's very helpful. I guess my bottom line question to you is, are you satisfied that things are getting better? I guess that's the best I can do.
In terms of corrective actions, it's a continuous effort. When we talk about communications as well, that would apply as well. Safety is not a single point where you say so everything has been solved. You're dealing with changing demographics of personnel, changing infrastructure that is either aging or in a different state of repair, as well as changing design criteria and the introduction of new features and equipment. So it's a continuous process, and that is why we exist, to continue to conduct oversight of the readiness and availability of communication practices and systems. And so I wouldn't want to impart that everything is fine or things are getting improved. There are corrective actions underway to improve the system for the long term.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Are there any other questions from any of the commissioners from Ms. Quiroz on this previous investigation? Okay, we'll move on to the next investigation, which is Mr. Quigley. Would you please present the final investigation report of the day?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0199 relates to a collision at Foggy Bottom Station, August 28th, 2022. During the response to this event, Metrorail did not initially follow requirements to stop trains on the adjacent track. Metrorail also did not have a hot stick and electrical gloves available to confirm that power was de-energized. However, the individual was quickly brought to the platform. Metrorail effectively acted in a timely manner to carry out this response. Investigation Whiskey 0200 relates to an evacuation for life safety reasons of part of this Carmen Terminal facility on September 1st, 2022. The facility, commonly referred to at Metrorail as CTF, is a support facility with training areas, offices, and the rock, among other things. A compressed natural gas sensor near room F105 alarmed. After verifying the alarm, building F was evacuated. The rock did not evacuate during this event. Personnel returned to the building approximately 1 hour later. The investigation determined that the sensor was defective. This completes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
I have a question for Mr. Quigley.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lobby.
Mr. Quigley, on W0199, you talked about the hot stick and the electrical gloves missing again or not available. Are they supposed to be at every station or on every train, or are they the property of individuals on Washington Metro? This is several accidents we've had where they can't find the hot stick and the electrical gloves. You know, what's here?
Yeah, from my understanding, they removed these gloves and the hot stick from the station kiosk because a lot of them were going missing and they were having a hard time tracking them down. Supervisors, Archer supervisors, are required to carry these gloves and hot stick at all times while on duty.
And they removed them from the kiosk. You know, is there some value to a hot stick, or I guess the electrical gloves may be useful somewhere else, but it just seems odd that the stations aren't equipped with these, since they're needed every time you turn the power off on third rail.
Correct. I agree.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby. Any other questions for Mr. Quigley regarding this investigation report? Okay, we have just heard 6 investigation reports. Is there a motion to adopt the investigation reports that have just been presented? That's Whiskey 0195, 0196, 0197, 0198, 0199, and 0200. Is there a motion to adopt these 6 investigation reports? Yes, Commissioner Lobby.
So moved.
So moved, Commissioner Lobby. Is there a second?
I second.
Second, Commissioner Farrar Dyke. Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
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 Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair Hart, the vote is 5-0 and the motion carries. I note that Commissioner Bob had to sign off at 2 p.m. He noted it in the comments, so he is not voting on this measure.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. We have no resolutions or other actions on our agenda today, so that completes our business for the day. As a reminder, you can always report any safety concerns through our website, WMSC.gov, through our social media channels like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or by email. I would like to thank Dr. Meyer and his staff for all their hard work to continuously improve the safety of Metrorail, and I would like to thank them for their presentations for this meeting. I would also like to thank the commissioners for being so engaged in the process and of this meeting. That makes for a much better product when we have the extensive commissioner engagement that we fortunately have. Finally, I'd like to thank the members of the public who attended this meeting. We expect to hold our next public meeting on March 7th, 2023. We look forward to seeing everyone then. Is there any further business? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.